All right, we're here with Allie Smith. Going to talk about the Ballad of Speedball Baby. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
Um, so yeah, in the book you talk about how you got into music, which I love. That's always my first question, how people, what made them first fall in love with music. I loved hearing you talk about like, hearing new wave and punk rock on the radio. But how did you get into writing?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to point out because I find it very funny that when we asked each other how we were, I was like, "I'm okay," and you're like, "I'm all right." Like we're trying to be sort of upbeat, but I think there's some heavy stuff on our minds. I don't know, like maybe people are going through it. I don't know. Anyway, point being, um, I was sort of heavily documenting everything that was going on all the time throughout. So I was photographing, I mean, I think it's maybe how a sort of inherently anxious person makes sense of the madness around themselves. I was keeping journals, I was photographing everything, and also I kind of wanted to be like Penny Smith for the Clash, making icons and legends. I thought that that was my role, sort of documenting until I started playing music. So I was already kind of doing that. And, as I've developed a career in photography, I shoot a lot for The Guardian, sometimes New York Times, and all these sort of magazines internationally. And I'm always walking that line between trying to make some cash and
Yeah.
pitching things that I can, yeah, and I know, and pitching things that I care about. So, if you want, there's like no Life magazine anymore. So if you want to be putting something out about, like medical marijuana and how it's enhanced this person's life, or feminist perspective of motherhood, you kind of have to like chip that out of the living rock, and so I just started writing so that I could have photo essays that I wanted to see in print.
Excellent. I mean, photography, music, and writing, it's great that you're doing all that. It's a lot of work. Like, it's so much work getting doing all that.
They work. Do you mean you get paid for it?
Oh,
No,
no, no, yeah, we should
no,
clarify.
I'm
It's a lot
kidding.
of
I'm kidding.
effort.
No, you're totally 100% right. And since I was a wee 20 something, when I started doing multiple things, I remember like my most upwardly mobile, sensible friend was like, "Well, which one is it? You're going to have to decide." And I was like, "Nah, I don't want to decide." And then I continued to say, "Nah, I don't want to decide." Because I kind of, and at this point in life, I'm super excited that it's kind of all of a piece,
Yeah,
I've
that's
done it.
awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting to me. So it's all together, different ways to express the human condition.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, people have told me before, you need to pick one. It's like, I can't choose between writing and music. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to. And then you've made it work. So awesome.
Well, so have you, and comedy as well, and the best book covers I've ever seen, yours.
Thank you
On
very
the
much. Oh, that's really nice to hear.
mustache one is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, Alan's an amazing artist. Yeah, so I guess my question is, where did in the timeline, where did these things fit? Was it music first, or um, were you writing before, keeping a journal before that?
It was music first because that started pretty young. And then when I was touring, I would keep journals and I would take photos. And the photos started to turn into like album covers for this band that I knew, or, flyers or whatever. And those bands, some of them started to get a bit bigger, like the Blues Explosion or whatever. So, we all kind of moved along a little bit together. And I would photograph for magazines, and again, for like Matador Records, they'd hire me to do album covers. So again, those were sort of in tandem because I knew musicians, I was a musician, and so I knew what it was to present as a musician, So I started in that world.
Hmm.
Um, and the photography went through a lot of incarnations. And I went just twists and turns. And I feel like that's everything I've ever done. Every aspect of my career has been reinvention and responding to the death of the market that I'm in, and then inventing a new direction. And I'm doing it now. Photography is under major assault, or it may have been killed. I'm not sure which
Hmm.
one. So, yeah. So to be honest, I'm switching more to writing now, in part in response to that reality, and in part because that's kind of where I'm at, I think.
Cool. Well, not cool that it's dying, but cool that you can pivot
Yeah.
and yeah, just have something to go off
Yeah.
with.
Mm.
How much did you mine the journals for the book?
I I mind them quite a lot, but almost always after I'd written some crazy ass story. And I was like, I'm sure this happened. This had to have happened. I mean, it was chaos. And then I ran. And then after a while, and especially after I got my book deal, I was like, I should probably check this and see if, and it not only did it happen pretty much, I don't know why. I think my brain is like a steel trap for nonsense. Like maybe because I'm a photographer, it's sort of like snapshots of everything. Like everybody I've ever met is in there. And there's no linear, that's a lot harder. But,
Yeah.
but, so I was relieved to find that it had happened, but also some other pretty heavy stuff. I was like, oh, I don't even think I want to put that in there. So it was in the end, and my father is real bonkers and super litigious, and it has instilled in me a sense of like, you better get this right, girl, because somebody's going to come after you. So I checked everything out. Yeah.
Well, speaking of your father, the unicorn analogy was one of my favorite parts of the book.
Oh, I love that you responded to that. I really do, because it's so personal.
Yeah. Um, when did you start to realize that? When did that beautiful metaphor come to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who has a complicated relationship with their parent, so everybody,
Yeah.
no, my relationship has been really fraught from the start, but it is really wild and confusing to go from being an adoring child, which is the vibe of childhood, especially when you have a parent who makes life kind of magical, which
Mhm.
is not a great gift. Like a parent giving you this magic of childhood, where later you might say like, oh, daddy's not rooted in reality, but at the time you're like, oh, the world is magic, and you could do anything really, you know what I mean? And I think that's actually a great gift. Unfortunately, in my situation, it came with the complication of other character traits that aren't great for me to be around, you know?
Mhm.
So me trying to figure out, what is that? Like, who was he? Who was that magical creature I remember so vividly, who I think has shaped me in so many ways, but who I can't know now? And I came up with this sort of metaphor because it is magic that even the most problematic person in your world can give you. And you can find a way to be grateful for that aspect of it. Do you know?
Yeah.
So,
I was actually just thinking about this yesterday. In Chinese astrology, I'm a double dragon actually, and the dragon is the sign of magic, and there is that magical quality that I've always felt in life, but also like there's a price for it, like not like living in the real world a lot of the time. So I was
mm,
just like debating about that with myself yesterday. That like, wow, it's
oh,
really a
interesting.
disparate sort of there's a price to pay for magic, I think.
For sure. I mean, the world, for one, the world does not reward you for
Yeah.
wanting to constantly stay out of its capitalist machine and
Hmm.
insisting on finding magic. I mean, that's what we're doing as artists. I mean, I don't want to be too lofty about it, but I think we're
No,
people who are
it's
compelled to peck at that, right? And sort of like look for the magic or create the magic.
well, that's what's wonderful about art. It's not only does it create magic, but it is a magical process. Like,
Yeah, for sure. But also, it's hard to rely on magical people sometimes.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah, it's totally.
No offense. You're a double dragon. I'm on board with that. I totally
I
respect
totally get it.
that. Yeah.
So for the creative process, like, what is your writing process like? And I imagine like being a parent as well, it's complicated to like carve out time. Uh,
Yeah. Well, he's 15 now, so things are changing a bit, somewhat to my chagrin, somewhat to my excitement. Um, But, I used to take great solace. I know she's super problematic for a lot of people, but just the small kernel of the story of J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter on napkins in Starbucks, even if it's apocryphal. Well, she had a tiny baby, like doing that, because I wrote this book almost entirely in coffee shops,
nice.
with a lot of loud music. I don't know why that was okay, but I just took sort of like, I think especially when you're I'm going to say, especially when you're a mom, because socially and societally and all the stuff, I have a partner who's committed to equality, but there's still certain things that happened and perceptions of me that changed at the time, even though I railed against them. It can cut into your autonomy and it can cut into your sense of self. And I love the sort of perverse pleasure of turning that into the strength. You know what I mean? Well, then I'm going to write this all on the back of a diaper. Well, I'm then going to do that. Like I'm just going to say, fuck you and your, limitations for me. And now as I get older, I'm doing the same thing. That fuck you and your limitation or your expectations or lack of them at every stage, I kind of feel. So anyway, now I am trying to become a person who uh, is more organized about her time. And I take a look, there's a cemetery up there where I've moved, and it's beautiful. And now I've started taking walks in the cemetery in the morning, and I'll come back in and do a spate of writing. And I don't know if it's like it's very beautiful and calm, or I'm just like, we're all gonna die. I just did that before. I was like, it's okay, we're all gonna, or it's not okay, but the fact is, and then I'll just come back with that sort of like urgency, I guess, combined with some cleansing,
Hmm.
and devote to expression, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
See how long I keep that up.
So your punk rock ideals are still very much alive.
Yeah, I like to think so.
That's
Sure.
awesome.
Oh, fuck. I mean, like, just can I curse?
Sure.
Just so we get the
Fuck
rules
yeah.
again. I mean, I think there's no other way, and in some ways, I feel like popular culture has come to meet us in this place where we're like, hey, that's not fair, and I'm going to speak up about it. I mean, there's a lot of antipathy towards what's going on and consciousness raising, if I'm going to look at the good spin on it,
Yeah.
sort of globally. And that's all very punk. I mean, we were all just sort of like, nope, nope, not accepting it. Going to put on this show to raise money against it. Going to show up here and, against for the Anti-Defamation League or whatever we're going to do. We're going to be involved and question, and I do mean though also that as you age, like maybe especially as a woman, I mean, I hear that enough. I'm so tired of hearing it. The expectations for you change, and I'm sort of like, nope, nope, nope. I mean, I think that you need to, it's harder to keep that energy up, but it's critical in life to keep that energy up and
Yeah.
question. And yeah.
Because one of the great things about punk, I mean, besides the defiance aspect, like equally big was that most punk rockers really cared about things and like made stuff happen because of that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, fanzines, the whole premise of fanzines, they cared passionately and made it happen on somebody's Xerox machine. Ooh, the doorbell's going to ring in 1 second.
Okay.
There it
Uh,
is, and we're letting it go. Should I let it go? Let's see, I think he'll leave it down there. If he leaves with it, I'm going to have to run downstairs. I'm watching
okay.
him out. Anyway, yes. I mean, I think a lot of the time we were the soppy feelers, It's almost like the world was too ugly sometimes, and we controlled the ugliness. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
you set the parameters for the ugliness of your world rather than just sit and stew in this sort of ugliness that is handed to you. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
Makes total sense to me. Yeah.
okay. Cool. This guy's wandering around with my package outside. Let's see if he leaves it there. Sorry, this is real. This is my punk rock concern right now. My package is outside. Anyway, so we were talking about the importance of, oh, we're talking about how we were always sensitive people. I do believe that.
Yes.
We were inclined to be. Yeah. I mean, maybe not the murderers, although it's possible on some level they were unresolved feelings. There are
Hmm.
quite a substantial number of murders in our midst in the New York 80s and 90s hardcore scene.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that in the book that like everyone has that story, which is
You,
scary, concerning.
you mean the story of their first murder? Is that what you mean?
The story that you know someone who has murdered someone or like know someone who is doing time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that bit.
Yeah, I started young with a beheading and it all kind of went downhill from there. So I don't I don't know what
Yikes.
is that just New York or am I a double dragon? I don't know if I
I'm happy to do your chart for you. Um, I think that might just be New York, probably some other parts in the US, but I definitely didn't get that up in Connecticut or even
okay,
Boston, really.
okay. I'll keep it to myself. That's
But yeah, that is kind of like a stereotypical idea people have about New York is that beheadings are not uncommon, I guess.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it turns out it's true. I don't know. I mean, I think they're uncommon. I just happen to be kind of unlucky, I guess.
Mm.
But, you
But you're
know,
not getting that now in Norwich.
no, no beheadings yet. Although the guy looked angry when he had to leave the package out the front
Well,
door.
this is being
No,
filmed too, so we'll have evidence.
no, I mean, like, if I'm honest, I've never sort of like had niceness thrown at me all day, every day as much. It's not obsequious as far as I can tell as well. It's just a difference. It's a very different experience living here now.
Yeah, so what brought you to actually Norwich specifically? Were you like a big Alan Partridge fan?
I love it. Alan Partridge. First of all, yes, I am. But I did not, can you imagine if I moved here? Because I thought he'd be here. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. No, I married a guy from Norwich, but he was in America. I married him and moved him back to New York when he wanted to come back here and do good for the world with NGOs and stuff. I took him back to New York instead. And then 13 years later, no, 16 years later, just 2 years ago, when I was finally ready to move and I was really done, which I'd never felt before in New York. Um, I wanted to have a big change. I wanted to have a big social change, and I pushed for us doing it. And he had wanted to do it for ages, so we came back, and it's been really amazing, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, I read that piece, the Work in Norwich piece came out, and you were saying that you've encountered some surprises along the way that you're kind of glad you didn't know about beforehand.
Yeah.
They might have.
And I feel weird talking not disparagingly, but mournfully or with fear about my immigration situation right now, considering
Uh,
all the odds are in my favor. Do you know what I mean? And I recognize that. Speak the language, can basically afford what's going on, blah blah blah. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, shut up. It's gonna be okay. But I think it's also good for empathy to be a new person and be a quote unquote outsider somewhere, immigrating to a place and having to sort of, I have had to figure out who I am without the definition of New Yorker first,
mm.
although it follows you and it precedes you everywhere you go. It's amazing, actually. It's a real red carpet moment. But it's liberating, actually, but it's humbling to be an outsider, essentially. And so I think it's increased my empathy, but it's also made me a bit sad about how hard it is to move to a different country. You're treated, at least bureaucratically,
Yes.
like an outsider, not to a person, but it's kind of ugly, you know? And please, like the government here, please. I'm not saying anything bad. Look at my punk rock values just went out the window. I'm like, I love all I do. I love the royal family. But like, it's a little bit weird to understand what it is to be othered in that way as an immigrant.
Yeah. No,
So
I lived in London for about 10 years, and I mean it was fantastic and it was so exciting going and living someplace new and like figuring everything out. But then again, like that all just like went away as soon as you had to deal with anything official. It was very much, very stiff and rigid, and you had to be very proper about everything you said. But the
yeah.
culturally, it was amazing. And
What brought you there? Oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
I was recording some music, and then I just fell in love with it and just did whatever I could to stay. Went back to school for a bit.
Brilliant. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And one of the things I really loved about the book was how you talk about just the love and excitement European audiences have for music, but also art in general. Like I found that to be like so awesome, being, playing shows in Europe and just being there. Just you're first of all, as an artist, you're treated so much better at venues. And just the excitement fans have, like you were saying, they'll, travel like a week through the harshest conditions to check out a band they heard might have be good.
It's so true. They'll be camping involved in that week. They'll be like hitchhiking. They'll be working on a cooperative farm. Anything to get to the, like, is great. I couldn't believe it. Like in New York, you won't, in those days, you wouldn't go above 14th Street. It'd be a huge drag. You just be
Mm,
like, because Lower East Side, I mean, where all the music that we were doing was happening, it was quite a small area, really. It was centered around CBGB's, you know, earlier on the pyramid, but not at that point. Brownies, just a few
yeah.
cluster of clubs down there. CB's being the Holy Grail, and we played there a lot. And I've had like CB's sort of saw me through every decade since I was aware of making music until it closed, um, or going to shows. But everything above 14th Street seemed like you couldn't pay us to get up there, and so for me, and that is a New York thing too, because everybody you meet has come there to like either escape some place where they were treated like treated horribly for being different,
Yeah.
or literally hunted down for being different, or to make it, quote unquote, So everybody you meet tells you you cannot live anywhere else. There's no other place to be. And so you get in your head like, nowhere else. There's nowhere else to be. It can be quite a myopic small town. I mean, it's a special place, or it was a special place for me in at the right time. But coming to Europe for the first time it just blew my head open. You know, there was a level of appreciation and maybe optimism in that sense that I hadn't. I
Mm,
left the cynicism, which I was deeply steeped in. I'm not blaming anybody else for that. It's kind of charming at the right time, cynicism, right? But
yeah.
there was openness when I came here, which was exciting, really exciting.
Yeah.
Did you think that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I loved it. And like everyone was just always like gung ho, like, let's go play the show. There might be like two people there, but like everyone was super excited. We're gonna do it. We're gonna play a whole new set of songs. But like here it was very reserved, I've always found.
Hmm.
And like shows could often be about just being seen there instead of actually people enjoying the music, which is always super frustrating. Like, people talk, you mentioned this talking throughout this band set and like,
The worst, the
yeah.
worst. Also humbling, but who the hell wants that? You've
Right.
driven to some small town in the middle of America. I didn't drive 10 hours to be humble, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, the time frame of the book, like, how did you choose that? Because you've kind of focused on the MCA period, but you had two EPs on Matador before that, and then you had a record or two records later, right?
Well, we weren't on Matador. We were on PCP. We were on Sympathy for the Record Industry, In the Red, and I'm probably forgetting one more thing. But uh, I chose that because when I wrote it 472 times, the whole thing, and I started out sort of like do timeline, straight timeline, and didn't really know where to start or where to end. And the problem with something like that is if you're a celebrity, that's what you write. And then this happened, and then this happened, and everybody's like, oh, and the publishing house is behind you, and the da da da, like I have a cynicism for the celebrity aspect of publishing and pop culture in general. But anyway, that's a sidebar. So I did it and did it and did it and realized that's not a story, that's a series of diary entries. Why should anybody care? And just kept trying to hone it down to what I was trying to talk about, which in the end was being a woman walking through this space,
Hmm.
who felt as entitled as any man around her to her own life of adventure, but there was a constant cost to be navigated for that. Um, and so that is what I was talking about. And I think that MCA period was really crystal clear in terms of everything that was going on in the music industry, in terms of like somebody signed Nirvana, they blew up, nobody saw it coming. All of a sudden, everybody needed Nirvana. So they were, all the big labels were gobbling up the little labels because they don't really know music.
Yeah.
And by way of Fort Apache in Boston, this incredible label, was it a label at the time? It was a studio at the time. The Lemonheads, Pixies, our producers, Paul Coldery and Sean Slade, had done all these seminal tracks,
Yeah.
you had Pixies, Lemonhead, Julian Hatfield. They did live through this whole amazing album, their big album, and they liked us. I mean, they particularly liked Ron, our insane, wonderful live wire singer. And so they brought us in and they never said we should change anything that we did. And they respected everything we did. And by way of then, we ended up on MCA. And I think that that story of like the whole first thrust of the book is getting to LA to meet the benefactors in at MCA. And it's always that same thing. If you're from New York, it's like, "Ugh, is this what I want? But wow, like this might be something. I might be a legend. Like it's more about achieving legend status than being like Limp Bizkit or I can't think. I don't know why that band came to mind. But so conflicted feelings, you're not supposed to want it, but you kind of want some of it and da da da. Um, so I thought that encapsulated that thrust and that story in itself encapsulated what was going on in the 90s in the music scene. And I said, that's a good place to start. And it's not the whole story because it certainly didn't define my life or our life as a band. We survived it and it actually got better after. Spoiler alert, blows up, didn't work out. It never worked out in those days, but I don't know. But there were
Not like
lots,
Limp Bizkit.
not like, I mean, that was the goal, but we didn't quite make it. But there were so many good bands in New York in those days, like I don't know, Delta 72, Jonathan Fire Eater, just the Blues Explosion, White Hassle, all these bands around us, and we had a recording, not a recording. There was a rehearsal studio, those basement grates on the streets in New York, and sometimes you
Yeah.
stand and it buckles a little bit, and you're like, oh, this is the time I'm going to die. There was one on, and it's probably might still be there, although I doubt it. Avenue B, right off of Houston, I think it was, and it always had garbage cans piled on top of it, so that if a fire did start in the basement, nobody was getting out through the hatch. That's not what I always think. That's me, the prepared one. But that was where the blues explosion and this whole circle of people in that world practiced. And I played with a lot of those bands, and I played in Judah Bauer's band for a while. And we all practiced in that really shitty basement. And again, that was sort of like encapsulated New York, like nondescript, dangerous, shitty little basement, and all this great music was coming out of it. And music that ended up really going further into the world. I mean, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs played one of their first show. We played with them at the Mercury Lounge, and like it just started. That was a little later, obviously, but a lot of stuff resonates so strongly out of these shitty little spaces in New York, and that's always been super exciting. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
that was New York that I wanted to write about, defined me really.
How were you like I remember the name Speedball Baby from the 90s. I was in Boston at the time. Um but and I came to the book obviously, my story through the resonance with my own book's name, but how are you
Yeah.
finding the audience for the book? Like it seems more than just fans of the music.
Definitely. You mean how am I literally finding them or how do I find
Yes. No, how
them?
you literally like how has the reception been?
Okay. They're lovely people.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because the argument against people publishing my book was she's not like several bigger publishing houses said, love the writing, love the voice. Who the hell is she? I can't sell this. She's not famous. And I was like,
Mhm.
fuck you. Because that's the same unimaginative, limiting, boring thing that we've always been pushing against in making music and, I don't know, trying to make something that matters. And I do get it on one level, because it's a very ridiculous, stretched industry, publishing right now. But when you get somebody like Blackstone Publishing and Daniel Ehrenheft, the editor there, and my agent Lee Sobel, all of them were like doubling down on what was there and not what was not there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you start without the premise that you're Kathleen Hanna, then you've got to figure out why anybody should care. And in my experience, I mean, some of that is frustrating. Sometimes you're like, oh, I mean, I'm like, I did BBC Sounds. I did an interview, like an hour interview on BBC Sounds. Why don't you trust me that I might have something to say that you'll be interested in about this particular thing? But a lot of the time it does circle back to you're not Kathleen Hanna, you're not Debbie Harry, you're not Kim Gordon. There's like four people that want to hear Mickey Birani, and bless those women. They should all have a voice, as should I, and as should all these women that are putting out books like the Luna Chicks this book about them. Um, so what you do end up finding is people who connect about other things other than that thing, and that's not the thing I'm talking about anyway. um, you know, what it is to be a woman walking through the world, what it is to care about underground art, what it is, the excitement of New York in the past and this time, long gone time where I can speak super credibly because steeped in it. It shaped me. It is who I am in many ways. So once you start talking about life in those ways, what you find is an audience of really curious, interesting people who aren't about the star fuckery of it. I mean, they might also enjoy that book, but they want the nitty gritty and they want the emotion. And so I've loved it. It's led to amazing conversations about real life. I mean, you're having conversations, we were talking about the unicorn dad. That's way more interesting than yeah, I don't know. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah,
So
no.
what I find are interesting and appreciate a lot of variable aspects of the
And
work.
it's just so well written. Like I really loved it. The writing was excellent. Like well done. I mean, it's one of the best written memoirs I've ever read. So I was really, really psyched to read it. Psyched to have it on the show.
Thank you so much.
And we were talking about we were messaging about poorly written books. We don't really have much time for those. Um, and you were saying that you wrote it 472 times or something. Like you do edit quite a bit, I take it then.
Yeah. I edit a lot and then I copy edit. That's what, much to everybody around me's chagrin. I'm like, oh my God, I get bent out of shape if there's any sort of like grammatical error.
Oh
Nobody
yeah,
cares anymore, really, except
I know.
me. But I don't think that's true, actually, because you do.
I do.
And when I read a book and all of a sudden there's like a grammatical error or there's two thes in a row, it takes me right out.
Yep.
And I want to stay in. So, bless everybody who has helped me get to that goal because we really went over it several times with a fine tooth comb.
I think you have to like
You do. You
it's
have to take
showing
it.
respect for your reader.
Thank you. And actually, I've gotten so many beautiful, wonderful, connective emails from people all over, which I value so much. I keep all of them. I keep all the posts that are up that talk about the book. It's really meaningful to me. Um, One wrote, "I read your book looking for an era, and I couldn't find one." It's like, what? Didn't care what else they had to say. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so there you
Wow.
go. I think
That's
there
a
is one there, though, I found.
I won't ask you what it was. Um, do you know Bill Drummond? KLF?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hung out with him last time I was in London and he was telling me his new project, it's probably finished now, but he was talking about how celebrity memoirs are just really boring and they follow the same exact pattern. So he was turning 70, I think, and he farmed out his autobiography. You could write in and claim a year of his life and then write 2,000 words on it. And then he was put them all together and was reading the audiobook himself, which is just, I
I
mean,
love it.
one of the many fascinating things he's done. I thought you might
That's
enjoy that.
I do. I really do enjoy it. You like the book? In the end, was it a good book?
I haven't actually read it. You can listen like chapter by chapter on his website. I think
Oh,
it's
wow.
randomly generated, and they were interesting. Like some were just completely fictitious. Some people had actually, tried to fit what they knew of his life story into that particular year.
That's way more interesting. Or it
Yeah,
sounds really interesting, you
yeah,
know? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd want to vet that a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel a little bit torn because on the one hand, mostly people didn't make any money and anybody who has something to say, I'd like them to have a platform, something of worth. But it is such a reductive process to turn everything into celebrity. It's just a little bit boring, and it feels so common. around us now.
Yeah.
Does that sound mean? I don't mean it
Not
mean.
not mean. That's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, there's certainly good books out there, and some of them are written by famous people. So it isn't a one to one, but you know what I mean, industry vibe wise.
Yeah. So who do you like to read?
Maggie O'Farrell, Joyce Carol Oates. People are a bit twisted and dark, but funny. I like memoirs. Mostly I like memoirs. Uh, and I like dark stories. I'm trying to think of some of the ones I've read lately, but they're all escaping me. But those are the ones those are the things I stick with. And I've known a few people lately who have put out books like Kid Congo Powers, and that was a great book because he's funny as shit. And he's been through a lot, and he reflects on it without the laborious ego that many people have.
Hmm.
He's sort of just lighthearted, and that's how he is anyway, or at least now. Um, but so I've had sort of like 10 books in a row of people that I know that put them out. And so I've
Oh,
been on them for a while.
nice.
My shelf is downstairs, and this one is just packed with extra copies of my book. So that I just sit around reading this.
Why not?
Ah. Yeah, so if I could see it in front of me, there was one about Anthony Bourdain that I read not so long ago. It was a bit trashy, but
Uh,
I like real stories.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what was the song at the end of the audiobook?
Oh, it must be the one I wrote about touring or about life. It's all right. Guess I don't remember at this point because I don't think I listened to the audiobook
Oh, really?
because I was there when I read it. It's like
Yeah.
I've heard myself enough. I should listen to it. But I think it might have been the one that I wrote, which was sort of a reflection on that time. Yeah.
Okay. Where
Yeah.
is that? Where's that? Is that elsewhere too?
Yeah, that's also on, it's not on Bandcamp, but it's on Spotify, but it should be on Bandcamp. Oh, it is on Bandcamp. Yeah, it's on Bandcamp. Maybe you could put a link somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
totally.
send you links. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's so disorganized, but yeah, been thinking about a lot of different things lately.
What was your experience like doing the audiobook?
Oh, it was incredible. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Um, I burped a lot. Apparently, it's a really specific breathing pattern to read for 10 hours straight, which I learned by the second day, but didn't know on the first day. So it's like, I'm so sorry. I just, you know, but I did feel very protective of it. And so I'm so glad I had to audition for it. So
Really?
I got
Wow.
the gig. Yeah.
Excellent.
But that's fair enough. I could have really sucked, flatlined on it. But if somebody else had missed the pathos that I was hoping to inject in certain things, I mean, I think I've heard from a lot of people, and I take a lot of pride in the idea that that's what is unusual in a music memoir, that it has a lot of pathos, really, a lot of vulnerability. Sure, there's ego, but it isn't all built around ego, and they say they laugh. So those things are really important to me. And
Yeah.
if people miss the beats and da 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 and miss the humor, um, that would have been terrible. But I had to wrest control of the whole. I was so grateful they let me do it, really. Yeah.
So why now? Why was this the time to do the book?
I mean, ask the 25 other memoirs I've just read about the 90s. No, um, I mean, all of it. I've just left the city that defined me and which I lived in my whole life. Um, and I'm very much in what's it all about mode. I think we're all at an age, a lot of people I know didn't get here. A lot of people died. Some other people I knew became quite famous, and so they're having a different trajectory. Sam from Interpol was the drummer in my ex-boyfriend's band, and I met him when he first came to New York, and he was a big Speedball Baby fan, and then they blew past us in terms of, I mean, they're a great band, but they had great success, in that next sort of chapter of bands coming out of New York. with the yeah, yeah, yeahs and all that and the strokes. Um, so it's the look back machine, you know, you get to a certain age, you want to understand what it was all about. I was talking with a woman yesterday, a new friend here. I've been meeting some great artists here and great musicians, and some of them have moved from New York. So we're all conclaving here. Um, but she and I were talking about what have plagued us as possible missed opportunities, you know what I mean, in life, because we had like a punk ethos or a feminist ethos or a crabby ethos or whatever we had, you know, how maybe we could have taken this road and it would have been easier, or we'd have more money now, or blah, 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 blah. I think there's a real benefit to, because it gets scarier sometimes when you're older, and I know I keep mentioning getting older, but I don't mean it in a bad way. It's like a trajectory. I'm on the ride. I like to keep developing as a person. I am grateful because I know a lot of people didn't make it here from that world. And I want to understand what life is about and what we did. What was the worth of what we did? Because I feel it was worthwhile,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I want to put more art in the world about being a woman in the world. And there aren't a lot of books about, I mean, there weren't a lot of women in that music world in the
Hmm.
80s and 90s on stage. So I think the more we have those, it's very important, actually.
Oh yeah. Because I mean, I don't want to say almost every, but I mean so much of the music I love is made by women. It always has been. And like all those bands were great and they people should know about them.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's very, my experience in the 90s was like being reduced to the female bass player, you know, or
Yeah.
being asked, like I said in the band in the book, like, why aren't you the singer? It's like, okay, I get it, you know, like let's get Tits McGee up front and, you know, like open her mouth. Like, I don't need your opinion of what I'm doing in the band. I'm okay, you know. So
Yeah.
there's always like a qualifying nature of like, is she the bass player or is she the singer? Those are the only two roles. And then of course a million women were busting that wide open. But that's a million only in the it's not really a million, it's very few in the context of how many people were playing music in those days. I hope it's different now.
Yeah. When did you start singing though? Because you've been doing that recently as
Well,
well.
first time I opened my mouth on a mic, which I can't actually call singing, was I was probably 19, and a band called Public Nuisance in New York, a very, very underground, I think they're still going on, very underground punk band, brought me in on bass. I think I played two squats, you know, and strangely, we're excited about a song that I wrote just for myself in the bedroom. And the bar, bless them, because they've been doing this for years, and people love them and it's great. But the bar was very low in terms of like, does it have a hook? Is it a hit? You know, it wasn't, that's not what we're talking about. So with that comes the liberation, right? Like, you don't play the bass, go play the bass. You don't know what the song is, just sing the song. And that was like a real one of those little gifts you remember. They shoved a mic in my hand. So I did that. Wasn't for me, went on to sing in another couple of bands. I never knew what I was doing. They were called Kelly Township and Radio One. They were fine bands. They were sort of punk ska bands. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to be doing. I was trying to be everybody I liked, Polly Styrene, Susie Sue, Chrissy Hind. I was just trying to be everybody else. Didn't know who the hell I was. Um, and then Matt Verderay, who's the guitarist in Speedball Baby, who, you know, created it with Ron Ward. He had already been in Madder Rose. He went on to be in Heavy Trash with John Spencer. But when he was creating Speedball Baby, he came and saw me in this band. And it was one of those gigs where you're playing to like a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea show. You're in the West Village and people are sitting at tables and you're like, why did we do this? And
Yeah.
but you know, I was like, well, we're here. And as the singer, I was like jumping on tables and I was screaming my head off, and it was probably horrible. But I think he saw sort of a kindred spirit of like, she'll go there, you know, she'll
Yeah.
go it, she'll be up for it. And then we became like the story of Matt building his studio is in the book, and it's
Yeah.
all about he used to silk screen for Andy Warhol, and so he was sort of in that world, but as an observer. And then this crazy, crazy art deal went down.
Yeah, that's a
And
really good story.
yeah, it funded his studio that we had for decades and learned. Everybody came through that studio. Mick Collins, Eugene Hutz, everybody who was making music in New York at that time came through that studio on the Lower East Side in his apartment. And we were there 24/7 just inventing whatever we could or learning whatever we could, So it was pretty remarkable time in that sense. So he's the one I started singing with him. We did a side band called the Oubliettes. I played drums and sang. And
Yes,
now, yeah,
that's a
now
great name too. I was listening to Angel Baby last night. That was so, I mean, in light of everything around that very David Lynch reminded me of.
totally, totally, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And this great filmmaker, Toby Amos, made that video. Again, in a basement, very inventive. I love the
Nice.
creativity that comes out of basements. Yeah.
One thing I did want to bring up, what I loved in the book was that you played Sex and Violence by the Exploited. That was just so perfect. It took me back to like being 13 or 14, being like, that's what you could play. It was just like, yeah.
Did you play it? Did you
Oh
play it as
yeah.
well?
My first punk band covered it a couple times.
Of course you did. What were
Yeah.
you playing on
Guitar. I think I sang. We traded vocals for,
it?
the incredibly
Creative.
complicated lyrics.
I mean, somebody can't do a whole 3 minutes by themselves. Somebody has to take half the song. That's right. Yes, we played air quotes that song quite a lot at first rehearsal. Yeah, it's like a gateway song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned wanting to put more art out into the world now, which you've had a very productive year. Well, last year you put out a record as well.
Yeah, yeah. Marco Butcher is a musician that is incredibly prolific and one of those people. He's in North Carolina, I'm in England, and he consistently seeks out people who he is drawn to. He knew Speedball Baby, he's very involved in that world and has a lot of crossover collaborations. And he just reached out to me and started sending me tracks that he creates in his studio in North Carolina. He's It kind of blew me away. It was one of those times where you're like, oh, nice guy, seems all right, let's just try this. And then he's like, how about this? And he's played everything on it, and it's fucking fantastic and inspirational and brings in all these influences from, all of it, all my influences he brought in and gave me some extra stuff. It's like Matt's mantra was always no rules. No rules, Al. No rules. And that's really helpful when you're making art, but it's also you do get caught up in the rules. Even when you're in like, when I was in Speedball Baby, I still thought about like what would people who like Speedball Baby like? It's you do limit yourself. And right now I feel like fuck it. Just send me something and he sends me all sorts of madness and I sit in my room in England and it's usually very impromptu. Sometimes there's some stuff that's come to mind, but it's all very organic and it happens very immediately with his stuff. And then I'll do the vocals, send him back, he mixes them, and we put out an album. Um, and it's on Bandcamp. It's called Rough Start, and it's got all sorts of crazy shit on there. It's got a circus song
Hmm.
that I wrote for my best friend about being so demented that even the carnies are scared of you, like two best friends. Um,
Wow.
in a good way, in a good way. And then that was kind of like Ron's. Do you know the Speedball Baby song "Dangerous Top"?
No, what's that on?
So I don't even remember which one it's on, but it was sort of like I don't know, an underground hit. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but it's no Limp Bizkit. But I'm just saying that it had us playing that leather bar called for the pork
Ah,
party.
yes. That
Yeah,
was wow.
it was a good story, right? It was a great thing. James Chance played with us, and but that story is about this guy that they dubbed the Dangerous Top in
Oh
the
yes, I remember you saying that.
gay leather scene. Yeah, in I guess it was the 90s. And Ron put himself in the role of the guy that was so frightening that he was looking for the dangerous top, and even the dangerous top didn't want to be found by him. So it's that perverse thing about like, okay, okay, world, you think you're weird? I'll one up you on that because you know the weird people that are in charge are not the weird people I like. So you know what I mean.
Yes.
Perversion and da da da. So anyway, we did a circus. Marco Butcher and I on Rough Start did a circus song. We did a sort of B-52s thing. We did some jazzy thing. We covered Venus in Furs. It's been really, now he's sending me stuff for a whole nother album. So
Wow.
he inspires the hell out of me. We've never talked. We've never Zoomed. We only text each other. Once in a while, there'll be a little voice message, but it's like online dating where you never actually date. It's sort of like all the precursor of like getting to know you. It's nice. It's great.
I
Love
love
work.
that. Like it's just about the work. That's awesome. And and you've just put out an album and are working on another one. Wow.
Yeah, I love it. He's great. He's incredible musician. Yeah.
So what else are you working on?
I'm working on a follow-up book. Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
what's this
Um,
one?
well, it's when you say it on paper, it sounds like trauma. What you writing about that for? But it's really about how unresolved trauma resonates throughout the world, whether that's the president or, just in the day to day or parents, so it's a plea for, I mean, in a roundabout way. It's through a series of short stories that are going to be really darkly funny, and they're all based on either true events or people that I knew. And they all exist in New York in the 90s on this one block. And so they're interrelated, but it all circles back around to how trauma shapes the world if you don't deal with it, basically.
Yep.
And that's my plea, my own personal plea.
I
Yeah,
sadly you don't really realize that until you get older when you've already had all the trauma thrown at you. Well, most of the trauma thrown at you.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, we're just swimming in the soup before that.
So how
That's
far are
where
you along with that?
not as far as my agent would like, but better than not having done it. Um, I mean, I've been living in a temporary situation until now, and now we have our home, and I feel like myself again.
Oh, nice.
And so I think it's going to ramp up now, and I'm looking forward to that. It's getting exciting. I'm getting to know the characters anew. I mean, they are from life, and some people will recognize them, but that's sort of incidental.
Hmm.
You know, yeah.
So you playing music over there too?
I'm not live.
Oh, okay.
No. No, I did do a little bit with my friend Adam Clark, but that's just guitars and singing, and I just don't, every time I do it, I love the doing, but everything that leads up to it, I can't take it anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah. Again, it's so much effort to make stuff happen.
I just want to be in this room doing my vocals, sending it to North Carolina.
I mean,
And
Limp Bizkit don't know how good they had it, you know?
oh, I mean, the rest of us know how good they had it. No, considering. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Bad. I mean, I don't even remember their songs. I shouldn't say anything about Limp
Yeah,
Bizkit.
no, why did that come up? I can't name one either.
I thought 90s Limp, who we weren't trying to be Limp. I don't remember. I don't remember what they sound like. There are a lot of bands we weren't trying to be in the 90s. Um, yeah. So I like that. I like my self-contained world of creativity. Do that, do writing, go out and do photo jobs. Ba ba ba.
Excellent.
Misanthrope. No, not. Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to promote or plug or where people can find you?
Well, they can find me on my website, alliesmith.com. And on Instagram, I'm Mama Love Allie, Momma. It feels like when you're from New York, that feels like a big difference because that's much cooler way. That's 1970s New York, Momma, Love Allie. Also, Speedball Baby has an Instagram account. And then I'm Allie Smith Photo on Facebook. I can't believe that sounds like I'm like saying AOL email address. I'm on Facebook, but if you are there, I am there. I'm not doing that Twitter stuff. No, ma'am. And other than that, you can just email me, reach out, let's talk. Let's connect in a real way. I'm for it. I'm
It's
for
been
it.
great talking.
Oh my gosh, it's been so nice talking to you. I loved. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about you another time. But I'm glad that we're connected now. It makes me so happy. And that somebody put our books side by side makes
Yeah,
me very happy. So
very
great.
fortuitous.
Yeah, and like what's better than a ballad? And being ballad says everything, doesn't it? Just sort of like this life is bittersweet, This life is as Marcellus Hall in White Hastle's song, life is still sweet. It is bitter though, but it is sweet.
Yeah.
So,
So my final question is always,
yeah.
if you had stolen a space shuttle for whatever reason, you had to do this, and we're flying it directly into the sun for,
Yes.
again, whatever reason you
Yeah.
had to be doing it, what would you
Give
want to
me
be
a reason.
listening to?
What would I want to be listening to? Oh, I'm going to say something so corny, but the truth is, I want to be listening to my son's voice
Oh,
talking about some nice stuff that we've done. Take me
that,
to that fiery grave.
that's really lovely.
I'll take it. Are we doing
I have no current plans.
that? Double
But
dragon, come on.
yeah, yeah, wow, you call me out on it.
Yeah, I'll stick with that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.